The next two children would be girls. Irina knew this. Although she refused to look up, she knew who had been chosen just by the voice. She hears the man walking towards her and stops several children away. She looks up just enough to see that the girl that has been chosen was one of the older girls at the orphanage. And she was a girl that had been kind to Irina on several occasions, almost like a big sister if she could have one. She had shared whatever she had with Irina and took pity on her. So, one more girl to go. Irina kept her eyes closed as she heard the man walking towards her. Her heart broke when the footsteps stopped several feet away from where she stood. She had hoped just even a little bit that maybe the fact that he was willing to touch my face and not look at me as though I was some scary monster, maybe that was something that I could hope for. But the footsteps stopped. Her little heart broke again. She wanted to see, though. She wanted to see who it was that had been chosen. Who was it that they had decided to take with them? She poked her head up and opened her eyes just enough to see that the husband was looking right at her with a huge smile on his face. He was smiling as though they had never seen another human being smile before. He knelt down and he held out his arms and said, "Irina, come here." She could hardly believe it, but she knew what was going to happen, so she walked slowly and kept her head bowed as she got to her new daddy. She kept her head bowed and said, "Daddy, you can just hug me if you want. You don't have to kiss my ugly face." This was more than the young husband could handle. He began to sob as he picked her up in his arms and held her with the kind of embrace that only a parent can hold a child whom they love more than life itself. He not only kissed her forehead, but he kissed both cheeks, and he kissed her burned and puckered lips. When he had ceased his sobbing, he set her back down, and he looked in her face, and he said, "Irina, did your matron tell you that we are very wealthy? I mean, that we have a lot of money?" She nodded, yes. She was smiling now. She knew she was going to go home. "Well, do you know how we got our money?" No, she shook her head. "Well, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor. But I'm not a doctor that goes and sees sick people and just makes sick people better. I'm a special kind of doctor. You see, I'm a doctor who gives people new skin. I am a doctor who, when people have bad marks, they come to me and I fix it so that they don't have those marks anymore. I get paid a lot of money to do it, and I am very good." The little girl couldn't believe what she was hearing. The husband looked in his new daughter's face and said, "When we get back to America, when we get home, I will take you to my office and I will give you new skin. All of this badness and ugliness that's on your face, I will take it away. And you will be just as beautiful as you were before all of this happened." This was more even than the little girl could imagine. She broke down and cried, and he picked her up and he cried with her, and the wife came over and all three of them hugged. And when they had cried themselves out, the new father put down his new little girl and said, "Sweetheart, go get your things. We're going home." True to his word, he took her back to America, took her into his office, and after several surgeries, she was restored to her original beauty. That in and of itself is the same thing that our Lord does for us. That act of removing not just the sin that we have committed and that we are guilty of and that will condemn us in the day of judgment. It isn't only that sin, but it's even the punishment, the consequence of our sin that God, through His Son Jesus, has taken away from us. Those of us who want to have it taken away. There are several people that don't see sin as an ugly, terrible, scarring manifestation of wickedness. Some would call it good. But it's there. And people can turn a blind eye to it if they choose. But that does not make it go away. Our Lord suffered here and died. He was bruised for our iniquities. He was suffering for the opportunity to take that away from us.